Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Daniel
With Dan Irvin.
So as we move towards the end now of the 11th chapter in Daniel, it ends on a pretty dark note. You know, after describing centuries of political conflict and precise, historical detail, this final section shifts a little bit. The language becomes a little more symbolic, a little more apocalyptic. And we meet a figure who's different from the others that we've seen so far. Verse 36 talks about this king who exalts himself. It says, "The king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place." So this is, when we keep going on, you can read all the way through verse 45 and see more about this king that's being described. This isn't just someone who's looking for power, but they're seeking worship. Someone who doesn't just rebel against the nations, but against God himself. And there's debate over who this is referring to, but whatever position you land on or wherever you think this might be pointing to, I think the point is clear in that as we think about the way in which our human ego and pride and all of us are prone to ways in which we reach for things that we are never meant to maybe have or control. I think the thing about pride is that it always ends up collapsing at some point, caving in. This king magnifies himself above every god. He disregards things that are sacred. He manipulates people. He seeks, this control. He promises strength and stability, but ultimately he just delivers chaos and destruction. This is the ultimate example of someone who is looking for self-glorification and what happens. And I think the beauty in this small section of chapter 11 is where we can see Jesus as the complete opposite of this king. You said this king in chapter 11 is grasping for power. Jesus had infinite power, but he made himself nothing. Philippians 2 points to this. This king that we read about in Daniel exalts himself above every god, but Jesus, though equal with God, did not count equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. This king speaks to astonishing things against the God of gods. Jesus, we know, remained silent before his accusers. He didn't defend himself so that he could defend us. He could ultimately pay the price, the penalty for sin. This king in Daniel chapter 11 desecrates the holy places. Jesus became the holy place, the true temple, the meeting place, the mediator between God and man. Jesus was torn down, destroyed on the cross, and then raised up on the third day, on Easter Sunday, so that we could know what relationship with him would be like. And finally, in Daniel chapter 11, this chapter ends with this king exalting himself and falling under judgment. The New Testament talks about Jesus in a way as a humble king who was exalted not by force, but ordained by God the Father. As again, we see a connection in the book of Revelation, chapter 13. There's a beast that's described, another kind of self-exalting ruler, but he is no match for the mighty Lamb. Revelation 19, it writes about the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, rides in to bring justice, not with tyranny, but with truth. He wears many, many crowns that he has earned, crowns that God was pleased to give him. Jesus is the servant king, the Lamb who was slain, the true and final ruler whose power does not corrupt us, but restores us. And that changes everything. It can change our lives. It can change the world that we live in that's filled with broken leaders and empires and people chasing power. Jesus is the King we've hoped for, we've looked for. He's not out to use people or serve his agenda, but he's out to rescue people and save people and bring people back to the God that they were created to serve and worship and glorify in the first place. Jesus is the final King, the true and better King, and his kingdom will reign forever.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.